Welcome to Opinions by Apierion. I'm your host, Michael Dersham, aka Dersh. These live audio conversations bring together experts, innovators, and collaborators in healthcare and health tech to share insights, tackle pressing challenges, and explore new ideas. It's an open, dynamic space where we break down what's happening in the field and spark fresh approaches to some of the biggest issues in healthcare today. Today, we're going back to the beginning, literally to the soil beneath our feet. Welcome to our presentation today of From Seed to Me, the origami of One Health. We're joined by Donnie Engelhart, a leading voice in origami. I know he's going to hate this for me, but I got to throw it out there. You know, the true dirt doctor or soil scientist. We'll have a little vote on that at the end. But yes, you heard. I knew you were going to kill me, Donnie. Yes, and you heard that right. Origami, the art and science of soil health as a living system tied directly to human health. You know, you can say from the ground to our gut. Donnie, it's great to have you here. If you wouldn't mind, just provide a brief background on yourself, and I would be curious. What led you into this science of soil?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for that. And no, I'm not going to kill you. Don't worry about that. So, the biggest thing, I guess, just, humbled to be here, first of all. Appreciate you guys, making me a part of this. And yeah, I'm just excited to share some things with you guys and see where this ends up going. But excited to be here. So, Donnie Engelhart, right now I'm an agronomist for Rocky Mountain Supply in Dillon, Montana. And really, what kind of got me to this point really is just I've always had a love for agriculture. I've had just a passion for soil health, a passion to see a healthier planet, healthier humans, healthier livestock, plants, soils, everything that we can help with in the health world and when it comes to agriculture. So um, I really think that a lot of this, when you're young, you don't realize a lot of things about soil health and how it all works. And I got the opportunity to be a manager at a soybean and wheat facility in Illinois. And I got to see some farmers bringing in seed that was just way better quality than some other farmers. And that sparked my interest as far as, well, what are you doing different than um, these other guys? And a lot of it was their practices and the fact that they held on to some regenerative type practices in their operations, less chemicals, less fertilizers, things like that, mainstream agriculture is all about right now. And so that is kind of the first moment that I realized that, man, there's definitely something to this. And then, man, I went down a huge path of reading a lot of books and listening to a lot of smart people. And that got me to where I am today. And, really right now, I think I want to just help mainstream agriculture see that there's a healthier and more profitable way of farming and ranching. And I'm in a position right now where I get to talk to a lot of farmers and a lot of ranchers. And I have the opportunity to show them that, hey, if you want to keep doing things the same way, that's fine. But I'm here to tell you there's a better way and a healthier way. And if you want to go down that path, let's go. So that's kind of the short story.
No, that's great, Donnie. You know, when I first met you and it was introduced to you, and we started to talk about this, it was striking to me the way you look at soil and the health of the earth, kind of on a macro basis, and the parallel that you see them as as a patient, just like a health doctor or one of veterinarians that that we've had on in the past. So I think you said something to me, Dersh. The soil is the original patient. or something to that extent.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is that? What does that mean?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's kind of, how we diagnose someone in a hospital, or even when they're not in a hospital. Like if you have a cold, what's the first thing you run to?
Uh, Probably the medicine cabinet, some lemon
Yeah.
drops, some honey. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that is what we see. Like when someone thinks of, um, I'm sick or I got something I need to fix, that's where we run, as humans, as we run to the latest medical advice, or, you know, advances, or, things like that, that I, I want to look at more of the soil as a person. But I want to also start with, what are the problems and not the symptoms? Because if we start looking at symptoms and we're just treating a symptom by taking cold medicine, right? We're
Yeah.
not actually treating the problem of how did we get that cold and how did we get this illness or sickness or whatever it might be. We just want to run to a symptom, fix instead of a problem fix. And so when I look at soil, I see the same thing. And I look at soil a lot of times in here in the West in Montana, and we have some really ups and downs on good soil, bad soil, unhealthy, healthy. And, that is a soil test, but not just a typical soil test, but something that dives into the living organisms in the soil, and how does that soil function with all those microorganisms, as well as, the bacteria, the funguses, the nutrients themselves. And, you know, it's funny. This kind of brings me to just another word I want to share with you. But, the human blood is kind of iron based, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the ocean, and I'm going to bring this up a couple of times, but the ocean water is salt based, but the ocean water has a mineral matrix really close to the human blood. So if you
Really?
really look up the ocean water, um, and its matrix and its mineral matrix, and you look at the human blood and its mineral matrix, really the only biggest difference is that human blood is iron based and ocean water is salt based. And going back to the beginning of time, God created the oceans, and we've lost a lot of that mineral that was in our soils. And so, kind of bringing minerals back is part of what I enjoy and what I like to do, and see what kind of issues are in these soils, and how we can, saturate these soils with more nutrient density, to create healthier food, healthier plants, healthier livestock, and in turn us. And that's kind of the basis of it. But I treat the soil like a patient. You're right, and it's really just finding out, just like you would in a human, what's going on with you, and where's the
How do
problem.
how do you, Donnie? I thought people would only look up in the textbook about origami. Now we're going to go on to, the makeup of oceans and blood and everything like that. So,
Yeah,
so
you can go.
I'm definitely going to be googling that tonight. Not that I'm fact checking
Yep,
you. I believe you, brother, but it's pretty
it
fascinating.
is.
So we talk about, you looking at, so all of a sudden I'm just thinking, when my kids were young, all of a sudden you see them with a runny nose, or even like you said yourself. But from a testing perspective,
Hmm.
what are things that you rely on, to take the quote unquote vital signs of that? And does that, because it's kind of like human, it's ever changing. I think you told me one day, when you were talking about even the data that you're getting off of all these different things and the lack of interoperability, which is, anecdotally the same as in human health and pet health. Um, so what are the tools that, or data sources that you're trying to, uh, you know, derive, some of your prescriptions for, if you will, and then what are the pitfalls that you see and challenges? You even mentioned to me, I remember one day you said, there's, even if we take, even if we take soil samples, it really depends on the time of day, and I need to know that, and not just that it was done on Tuesday at 11 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot there, and I'll kind of condense it as much as I can. But I would say that, first of all, when you're doing soil samples, they have to be at the same time of the year, the same time of day, and they have to be in the same spots. You have to GPS those spots, because if you move over 3 feet from where you soil sampled, you're probably going to get somewhat of a different reading. Now, I don't want people to think soil samples are like just a set in stone number, that what you get on that paper is what everything is in that field. Soil is so different based on, there's elevation changes, there's texture changes, there's all kinds of things. And so that alone is an integral part of, how we get the right results of what we're wanting to look at. Now, what I look at when I get some results back is, first of all, I want to look at the pH of the soil, and pH stands for potential hydrogen. So you're basically looking at the acidity versus the alkalinity of the soil, and that is going to tell you if you can, you know, utilize nutrients to the best of those nutrients and those plants' ability. And if you have a low pH and you're really acidic, then you're going to have a tough time with, calcium and magnesium and sometimes phosphorus and nitrogen and molybdenum and so many things that that plant needs to thrive. It's, that's the root of the problem. But if we just go out and spread fertilizer,
No pun intended,
yes,
right?
right. Yes, right. So
Anyway, sorry.
if we just go out and spread fertilizer, then we're just treating a symptom, and we're not really ever fixing the problem. And so I like to look at that as probably the first thing. The second thing, I want to do is I really want to be on that field. That's probably the most important thing to me, because can that soil breathe? Can it retain water? Can it hold nutrients? All of these things are pivotal in knowing how to treat the problem of what's going on in those fields. And kind of
But you're
go ahead.
but sorry, but you're only one person
Yes.
on it, and your teams are out there. How, how do you see? And I'm just, you and I haven't talked about this, but how do you see something like, can we use drones and video footage and things like that to get us into hotspots and areas where then you bring the experts in? Is that something that would be important as we're judging the health of that? And then I want to broach this subject, which I think you've talked. It's provocative, but you talk about it in a very distinct way, and how we can, how can we look at maximizing with optimizing? That there seems to be confusion there on even how growers look at it, or even cattle ranchers look at it. So
Yeah.
I know again that there was a lot there, but can you see a play for real tech and then AI? Have you been thinking about that? And then how do we get to this whole notion of maximizing and optimizing?
Yeah, and so I'll tackle the technical side of this first, because I have a drone, and I do some of that aerial footage of fields and mapping, and kind of explaining to farmers, just you can see results from the air a lot better than you can from the road or from just standing in a field. So the cameras and sensors today on drones are incredible, and you've got multispectral camera sensors, hyperspectral, you got thermals, you got RGB cameras, you got LiDARs, you got um, a couple others that I can't even think of the name of, but those are all, estimating nitrogen accumulation, or the nitrogen status, or looking at canopies and seeing how open, and seeing what the soil temperatures are. And so there's a lot of like, I mean, we're spraying now with drones, and so there's a lot of
Yeah.
technology there. I think it's all useful, but I think optimizing profitability is going to be a little difficult at this stage of the game with drones and all the things that are out there available to farmers that could capture a lot of data from drones. But I also think there's, you know, one thing I'm hoping somebody can create or invent is a live soil sensor in the soil that tells us all of these parameters that are important to us, live. And so you get updates every half hour of your soils, and you know what's going on in those soils every half hour. And it does change, like to the minute, things change based on temperature, based on moisture, based on what your practices are, based on the crops that you have in there. So there's a lot of technology there that um, I hope someday gets perfected to where we can utilize the real time data in soil health. And I think that would be a game changer for the
Yeah.
agriculture industry. So
No, I get you. So what talk a little bit about, you know, this push, of course, when we're looking at yielding and maximizing that yield, but also kind of cultivating a resilience, if that's a way of putting it, as far as your words are always like, how do we optimize that?
yeah,
And and I think that's a message that we need to start getting out there, because when we're and I'll let you go on it, but when we're looking just at yield and we're not looking at the optimization, and we haven't drawn that, from seed to me, from that soil through the plants, through consumables into our grocery stores, and we because before I met you, I mean, I didn't know there was such a direct line,
yeah,
extending that One Health all the way down to the soil.
yeah. So there's a lot there, like you said, but I think one of the main things is the optimal production versus maximum production. I've kind of got a good example of that. A couple good examples, I guess I can throw at you. But one is what is, I mean, you may not know, but corn is the largest production in the U.S. There is so much corn in this country that, do you know where half of that corn goes? Do you have any idea?
Um, for feed, I guess
So,
that would be my.
so it goes to ethanol. So,
Oh, really?
so,
Oh, I got you.
so all of the corn that we're raising in this U.S., if half of it's going to ethanol, how much do we really care about the quality of that corn? Like
True.
nobody really
Yeah, yeah.
sees that correlation that, okay, well, we've got a, commodity that is having farmers go a certain direction. And so they're tied to that commodity. And that could be grain prices, that could be ethanol, that could be anything. Um, that to me is an issue and will never probably be to the optimal production in corn density or the nutrient density in corn if all we're worried about is just selling ethanol. Now, you're right. If we go to feed and if we're eating this corn, now we have like a true understanding of, how healthy is this stuff that we're eating and putting in our bodies. And I'm going to back up just a little bit and we'll come back to this. But what I like to talk to farmers about or ranchers is, getting them to understand the soil beneath their feet. And food is medicine. And I need people to understand that. And so when I go to a farmer and, say he's a traditional farmer, he's got lots of inputs going on in his farm. And, there's certain places and times for that. I understand. But when you meet somebody and you see that they're not being profitable or they're having trouble with diseases and pests and things like that, I just ask them like, what is your largest asset on this operation? And I'll get answers from machinery to crops to whatever, but rarely do I ever get the answer as it being soil. If
Hmm.
they know me, they know what I know what their answer is going to be. But if they don't know me, usually they don't say soil. Um, so then, you know, if soil is the largest asset in your operation, what do you actually know about the largest asset in your operation? And that gets them to really think like, oh man,
Not not much.
I haven't really focused on that. I mean, they'll tell
Yeah.
me all about those cows. They'll tell me all about those yields that they're getting, but they're not going to be able to, in detail say, well, this is what my soil looks like and this is what it's doing and here's my problem. So getting a farmer rancher to understand that first is the first thing I try to do. And then we go into the optimal versus maximum production. Another example of that would be, and I don't know if you've realized this, but think back when you were a kid. Have you ever noticed the size of chicken legs when you go buy chicken legs now compared to when you were a kid?
Um, like a lot of these things, I haven't really thought about
Yeah,
it, but
yeah. So think of how big a chicken leg is at a store now compared to what it used to be. We're trying to maximize these animals almost to the point where it's unhealthy for those animals. And the same with crop production. We're trying to get the most yield out of things that, um, you know, we're trying to out yield our environment, and that's not where we should be. So going back to your question on optimizing and maximizing even the technology side of it, it's got to make sense, profitability wise for us to do that. But to optimally grow a crop with the most nutrient density you can possibly get, you know, it's going to have to be getting rid of these isides like pesticides, herbicides, fungicides,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, these fertilizers that they can make a big, really good crop, but that's our way of doing things and not really the way God intended things to be. And so,
Do you
go ahead.
do you see some generation? I mean, and again, I'm this is an assumption on my part, but a lot of farmers, cattle ranchers, and the like, they're generational,
Yep.
right? And you've learned, you know, from your grandfather, great grandfather, father, son. Is there is there a generational shift in the way that the younger farmers are looking at that soil, looking at their crops, looking at their animals, as it relates to these these pesticides and things that
Yeah.
that we've been
Yeah,
using?
absolutely there is. And that's why I'm excited about just the way things are going in agriculture right now, because there is a large shift generationally where you see a lot of the younger generations saying, hey, Dad, let's try this and let's see if we can improve our quality. Just
How's
something.
that? How's that go?
It actually goes fairly well if it's coming
that
from
that
the
that
sun.
that's that's encouraging.
Yeah.
So,
No, and I'm seeing, and this is my area. This is in Montana. I can't speak for the whole world over the last 5 or 6 years, but I know that there is a large shift to a more regenerative space in agriculture. And now it's, how do we get those regeneratively grown crops, produce, animals, sold to, there's got to be a market for it, right? We've got to have people
yeah.
looking to buy healthier products. And so once we see that shift, I think agriculture is gonna go to a different level and something we've probably never seen before. And there's already some companies out there doing this. So I don't know if you've heard of Understanding Ag, but that's kind of the Gabe Brown method of regenerative agriculture, and he's got some really good stuff. There's Regenified, which is a company that if you get the stamp approval of Regenified on your produce, then it is considered, grown under that regenerative umbrella. And you can buy and go to the store and buy regenerative products. But Regenified is one that has the stamp of approval that this crop was grown, you know, under this umbrella, and it should be healthier. And what I would love to see someday is, for us to have a nutrient density label on all of our produce and all of our food in the stores, because you a lot of people don't care where their stuff comes from, and I think a lot of people should. I think a lot of people should care about what food they're buying, where it comes from, how it was produced, and I think we'll see a healthier world.
I think you're right there, Don. But I think there has to be a real education to,
Yes.
to us, the population, because, even if I just look at when things are labeled organic, who's buying the organic, what's the premium on organic. But if we really understood, and your voice was able to again connect that to the health, this regenerative product also is healthier for you. It was grown healthy, and somehow, but could we see something like I don't know, like a soil health, and like really upset, like, and create some interesting economic models around this, like the a soil health index, and being incentivized or tokenized to be able to have, kind of raise that base level in a positive way.
Yeah.
Or do we see insurance companies or public health agencies understand and try to fund some of this? Because I'm just thinking about this, that if we were able to convince health insurance companies that this means, healthier members, right,
Hmm.
which reduces cost. I mean, I'm sure it's a, pretty significant algorithmic model that we'd have to put together, but it would make sense that if health insurance companies bought into this, and they knew that, the science of soil led, again, I keep on saying, because it's your, that direct pathway, that clean line of sight right into human health. Could we encourage them, or do you see any of them, the Aetnas, the Cignas, the Humanas, or even some of the public health agencies coming into this and starting to fund projects that get us to, the world that you want us to get to?
Yeah. I mean, I totally can see that, and there's there's ways of going about that. I think that you said it. It's the education part of it, but it's also got to be the buy-in too of this nation to say, hey, we've got an issue with you know diseases and sicknesses and things like that. That, man, if we just could rely on food as medicine, I mean, we've just got to get everybody to see that and to think that way. Um, I think one of the ways to start with that is, bringing together like the doctors, the veterinarians, the agronomists, the ecologists, the feed guys, all kind of just under a single mission, to build healthier soils and healthier systems by tackling all the shared risks that they have. Like they have the same shared things that I do when it comes to, you know, healthier systems. But getting all these people together and kind of sharing how we can go down this road together, I think is a huge road that needs to be paved, and I think we can all do it. I think we can all get there. But I think we just have to be, open to that and seeing it as a whole system and not just as me as an agronomist, just focused on, you know, soil health or plant health. Like it's got to be beyond that. Um, there's kind of a system already in play, and I was telling you about that understanding ag. So they have the six principles of soil health, and I think if you follow those six principles, that's a step in the right direction. And if you could have an insurance company say, hey, well, if you're doing these things, then here's your here's your bonus, or here's your whatever they're willing to do for that. But I see it as a system that, I wish a lot of people would just understand that there's a lot to soil health, and it's not just a one size fits all thing. But I definitely think insurance companies or anybody like minded would take a look at that and say, yeah, we could be there as a positive for a lot of people if they did
Yeah, and
this route.
yeah, and I think those economic drivers, and even if there's programs, even like carbon offset credits and being incentivized in that way, or like I said, maybe something like a quote unquote a soil health index that
Yep.
that could be tokenized and rewarded all the way through that quote unquote food chain, all the way up to our health.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's not one of those where kind of like those conference discussions where you have a great conference, you meet all these people, you have so much energy, and then it dies on the vine for another year, right? Because there wasn't a platform or cadence or anything, so
Sure.
I maybe, I don't know, maybe we started a little bit of it today, Donnie.
Yeah.
Because for sure, you showed us that just kind of wrapping up now, but you certainly showed us, well, one, the definition of orogamy, and I will tell you, and you remember this from that didn't roll off my tongue very easily for the first few times that I said it.
Yep.
And but you clearly defined, what we eat is a reflection of the health of that soil, and ultimately the health of the patient. And perhaps orogamy and folks like you can be that next great bridge in agriculture and medicine. And I don't want to sound too idealistic, but planet, really the planet well-being.
Yeah.
And so again, thank you for helping us see that the ground beneath us, that's where it all starts, bro.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you. Any final thoughts on your end, Phil?
No, just, I mean, I think, just as visual thinkers, I think there's, when I'm out in the country and I'm looking at a lot of farmers and ranchers, I want them to see, what they're seeing, and I want them to take note of what that soil looks like, what it's doing, and just remember, like, soil is our largest asset, and food is medicine, and I think that if we can all get to that point someday where we look to food as our medicine, we're going to be a lot better off.
No, that's great. Donnie, I appreciate you coming on today. It was insightful as ever. When I speak with you, I valued our relationship to date, and I look on, forward, seeing if we can do this yeoman's task together.
Yeah, no, great to be on here, and great to be down the road with you.
For all those out there, as always, we'll see you around the World Campus. Healthcare to human care. Thank you.